As you may be able to hear today, it's quite windy. Now I've had a fair bit of experience with filming in the wind. So that brings me on to the question, well, what is wind? Why is it windy? Well, just north of Scotland over there's an area of low pressure. If you pressurize a container, you make the air inside this container at high pressure in relation to the air outside, which is at low pressure. And of course, if you open that container, you allow the air to escape. The air travels from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure. And that is exactly what's happening with the air outside. It's moving from an area of high pressure to an area of low pressure. Now you may ask, well, why then is the wind coming from the west when the low pressure is in the north? And the answer is because the Earth is rotating. Because the Earth is spherical, places near the equator travel faster than places near the poles as the Earth rotates, because of the longer distance that places on the equator need to travel to get around the Earth in the same amount of time as the places near the poles. So if you have a globe and you introduce an area of low pressure, the air will move towards that low pressure from all directions. The air coming from the east and the west can travel towards it in a straight line, but the air coming from the north and the south encounter some small issues. You see, the air in the south was moving faster than the low pressure area as it went around the Earth, and the air in the north was moving slower. As a result, the air approaching from the south starts to overtake the low pressure area, whilst the air from the north starts to fall behind. And even though this air is moving past the low pressure area, it's still being sucked towards it. So as it travels past, it gets gradually pulled in a spiral shape. The storm is now spinning. Because of this, storms in the northern hemisphere rotate anti-clockwise, whereas storms in the southern hemisphere rotate clockwise. So if the air is moving towards this area of low pressure to balance it out per se, then why does that area of low pressure stay low? Why doesn't it become an area of high pressure? And the answer is because at the center of this area of low pressure, the air is rising. And that constantly updates this area of low pressure and keeps it low. And it's in fact the behavior of that rising air at the center of this low pressure system which determines the characteristics of the entire storm. If low pressure is over very warm water, or in areas where the temperature difference between the air and the water is very high, then the air will rise rapidly, fueled by the evaporating ocean and the temperature difference. This means that if you have an area of low pressure, a depression that moves over water, it will often strengthen, and if it moves over land, it will often weaken. And in fact, most low pressure areas tend to form over water where you have this constant evaporating effect. In fact, that's exactly how tropical storms form: hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. The difference between the center of the low pressure area and the high pressure areas around it dictate how fast that air moves from the high pressure into the low. So the lower the low pressure, the stronger the associated winds. Now, the low pressure to the north of Scotland right now is about 960 hectopascals at its centre. Compare that to the 1040 that we had a couple of weeks ago, and you've got a pretty big contrast. The lowest pressure ever recorded on the Earth was 870 hectopascals during a typhoon in 1979. Just imagine the sucking force on that. Absolutely unbelievable. This is my trusty anemometer. This is a wind measuring device. So far, 11.6 miles per hour. Look at that, that is coming straight for us. Oh, anemometer's waking up. Got a gust of 15 there. Okay, so I'm going to start heading back because that is a really dark cloud. It's now actually starting to rain. But I just wanted to point out now, I can actually smell this storm. I can smell it coming. Rain has a smell. It's called petrichor. And with the wind that's coming in front of this storm, it's actually pushing some of that smell ahead of the storm.